So for Sister Ghazala here more, this is picking up on how the Muslim communities are really not doing these tests.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, because my initial thought would be that it's a mix of ignorance as well as fear, and maybe a bit of pride in there as well that might be stopping?
Yeah,
people?
So sometimes I think within certain faith groups as well, including the Muslim faith group as well, that people have this idea that, it's the will of God, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I think it's a bit similar to when we were able to speak to the congregation a few Fridays ago, where the Imam was mentioning that, we have a responsibility to look after our bodies, to take care of our bodies as well. So it's so important that we are actually doing that. So when we talk about sort of fear factor, what we're trying to say is that let's put the fear factor aside. The idea is that if we can detect it early, often enough, like the statistics with Johnson mentioned, that early diagnosis can mean successful treatment and extra life years. And who wouldn't want that? Yeah. So all we're trying to say is that let's try and get that early detection, so we don't get to that stage where it's harder to treat, and potentially could take your life. And like I said, it's not just the Muslim communities, it's many other communities as well. We have that fear factor as well, of the fear of the unknown, or people thinking that, well, I'm not ready in my life to have that sort of a diagnosis. But all we can do is try to encourage people that, look, surely you would want to have those extra years of life, and to get something detected early would definitely be the sensible way to go.
Of course.
Yeah, I guess it's not just fear itself. There's a lot of embarrassment around these things, and the cultural issues as well. With people seem to think that they're actually touching their own sample, and that's not necessarily the case. You don't actually touch your poo at all when you're doing a sample. So there's a bit of misconception there. But certainly from my perspective, 12, 13 years ago, my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer, and during that time she was working really hard. She missed a screening appointment, and eventually when she did go, she got a late diagnosis. But I remember at the time, my family relatives stopped coming around because they're worried that they were going to catch cancer from my mum, for example. And there's all these myths out there, and people just need to talk about it more and not feel ashamed or embarrassed or feel like they're putting a burden on their family or friends, or
that somebody's at fault for having cancer as well. Exactly. I don't think we should ever have that sort of blaming and shaming, that somebody's at fault maybe because of their lifestyle, their weight, etc. Bowel cancer can happen to the what on the surface seem like the fittest and the most healthiest of people. So I think the idea is that is just to get it found out and to be able to discuss it, and for it not to be a taboo topic. We might not want to discuss it over the dinner table, but certainly we want to be talking to people about it individually, definitely.
Yeah, well, I guess sticking to the topic of myths, what are the myths about cancer that absolutely need to be debunked as soon as possible?
Yeah, there's so many myths out there. I mean, sometimes you just have to pick up a local newspaper, and on the front page it's splashed out saying that this and that is causing cancer, but there are so many myths out there. I think the most recent one was mobile phones, saying that can cause cancer, and again, there's no evidence there at all how that can cause cancer. Again, along with other examples such as drinking plastic bottles or drinking water out of plastic containers. There's so many out there.
Yeah, they're using microwaves, like you said, with the water bottles, mobile phones. So, there's always research going on. So the majority of the research suggests that there's no connection with those things. The things that we are told that do increase your risk of getting certain cancers is the things that we've mentioned, that unhealthy lifestyle, processed red meat, alcohol, smoking, etc. So if we try and sort of focus on those things which we can sort of control. And then also one thing that we've not touched on as well is if you've got a family history of bowel cancer or any other cancer, then it's so much more important for you as an individual to make sure that your GP is aware of that, because there is a slightly increased risk for people who have a family history of certain cancers. So it's important to talk to your GP if you do have a family history. And again, that's why it's important for individuals, communities, to talk to their families. If they've got cancer, don't hide it. Share it with your family so that your family know of the history. Fathers, grandfathers, mothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. If you do have any particular cancer in the family, it's good to be able to actually share that information, because then it allows the individual to take any steps, because there are, again, like I said, with certain cancers, the way you're tested could be slightly different. You may be called back more regularly for certain tests like your mammogram or your bowel cancer screening kit or your cervical screening. So it's important to share your family history.
Yeah. Actually, I've seen a couple of points that you've noted here, which seem really interesting as well, about myths that need to be debunked. So eating burnt food.
Yeah, that's another one that I found. I mean, I guess I've always been told that by my parents, that eating too much burnt food is going to cause issues. But again, there's no scientific reports out there that indicate that that's a direct link to any kind of cancer. So I guess,
I think we've got stress on there as well.
That's
one that people associate.
Stress.
That stress. So what they say is that stress isn't sort of directly linked to the cancers. However, if you do have stress in your life or mental health issues or other similar issues, they can then impact other things in your lifestyle, like your eating habits, your exercise habits, etc. So sort of indirectly they could affect your risk of getting cancer, but nothing direct that we know of. And I think there's the Cancer Research UK, which is a really reputable charity organisation which do a lot of research, and you can go on their website to find out sort of further information about some of these myths and which are true and which aren't. Yeah.
Well, I think the last one that I do want to raise though, because I think I noticed this one myself now that I think about it, using sweeteners in tea and coffee. Because I remember in the Muslim community, our elders were drinking a lot of tea with sweeteners, and then suddenly they stopped.
Yeah.
So is there a rumour going around that?
Well, again, that's another myth. Supposedly, there's no direct links to sweeteners having any effects on developing cancer. And again, that's something that I heard as well, because my wife, she's always having sweeteners. I'm like, I'm not sure about these sweeteners. I know it's a good substitute for sugar, which I assume it's probably a lot better than sugar.
And the other thing is that all the levels that are in our foods, etc. In the UK we have very high standards and regulations. So what you are able to have and you take, those things have been checked and regulated for use. So if you're following those guidelines, then it should be fine for you.
Yeah, I guess what we're not trying to say is, cut out everything completely, because that wouldn't be that sustainable, and obviously it wouldn't be that enjoyable, because we need to have some kind of enjoyment with our food.
It's everything in moderation, isn't it?
Of course it is, definitely. Having, once a week some processed food or some red meat isn't going to be, make or break when it comes to getting cancer. It's like Ghazala said, it's having that moderation and just thinking what we're eating, And
if we are having a lot of those things that we shouldn't be, then it's trying to reduce them, if not try to eliminate them.
Yeah.